The angels prostrate fall. Turn up a bit, please. Oh, hail the power of Jesus' name, that angels prostrate fall. Bring forth the royal diadem and crown him Lord of all. Bring forth the royal diadem and crown him Lord of all. O seed of Israel's chosen race, now ransomed from the fall. Hail him who saves you by his grace, and crown him Lord of all. Hail him who saves you by his grace, and crown him Lord of all. Let every tribe responsive to his call. To him all majesty ascribe, and crown him Lord of all. To him all majesty ascribe, and crown him Lord of all. Oh, that with all the sacred throng we at his feet may fall. We'll join the everlasting song and crown him Lord of all. We'll join the everlasting song and crown him Lord of all. Crown him with many crowns one day. We'll be in heaven, lay down all the crowns at his feet and worshiping him. There's a song that I've been listening to, and it says, I'll worship only at the feet of Jesus. That's what our goal ought to be now, but one day that's all we will do is just be worshiping Jesus, and what a day that will be. Mark chapter 14, please. Mark chapter 14 is where we're going to be. The text is 12 through 21. But we're going to look at a few verses before, and we won't make it to chapter 20, to verse 21. That would be next week. But we'll be continuing the thought. Going through the Gospel of Mark, we're almost done. We're in the time frame. When we read these passages, I want us to understand where we are in this. We are almost to the Garden of Gethsemane. We are almost to Calvary. We're almost to the resurrection. The end of his earthly ministry is drawing to a nigh. Is drawing nigh. It's coming to a close. And so keep that in mind as we think about these things. And no doubt for the past 3 years that the disciples have been with Jesus, can you imagine the amount of learning that they have done? Can you imagine in our dog class, we on day one of the group classes, it's a lot of information that is given, a lot. I remember my first day, I'm like, whoa, my head hurts. That's a whole lot of information all at one time. And we often say, I know I gave you a lot of information, but we'll keep on giving you that so you remember that. Can you imagine every day is like that with Jesus? Just walking with him. What about this? What about this? Learning the constant knowledge, the constant growth growing and listening to him. But with that being said, there was one disciple, and we know him well, that followed Jesus, that walked with Jesus, that went through all the things that the other disciples did. Peter, John, James, Andrew. He could have been a Peter. He could have been a John. He could have been all of those people, but he did not react to God's presence as the others did, and we know him by the name of Judas Iscariot. So we're going to look at this thought tonight. Lessons from Judas, a friend who betrayed a friend. Don't answer out loud. Have you ever been betrayed by someone before? That maybe you thought you count on them and they just stabbed you in the back. I'm sure all of us have been to that at some point to that. Have you ever been betrayed by somebody who you thought was a friend? It hurts worse. It's like, wow, of all the people I didn't think you would. Did Jesus know Judas? Sure. Did he know his heart? Yes. Did he know what the end result was going to be? Yes. But the disciples did not. The other 11 did not know. And can you imagine, as Peter and John and others are watching this take place, I wonder how wide open their mouth was. He just did what? A friend who betrayed a friend. Last week, if you remember, we looked at Mary, who took her hair with the ointment, washed the feet of Jesus, right? So last week we saw this. Mary asked this question, what can I give? There is nothing that I have that I am not willing to give. I'm willing to give however much, sacrifice whatever there is. Judas, on the other hand, in this passage, did not say, what can I give? He said, what can I get? I don't care if I have to backstab, betray, deny. I don't care what I have to do. I want something in return. So that brings us to verses 10 and 11 of Mark chapter 14. And Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went unto the chief priests to betray him unto them. When they heard it, they were glad and promised to give him money. And he sought how he might conveniently betray him. We ended with that thought last week. There is no convenient time to betray Jesus. There is no convenient time to do the unthinkable. It will be, I am looking for a convenient time to cheat on my wife. No, there is no convenient time to be unfaithful. There is no convenient time to do those things. Well, I'm just finding a convenient time to murder Brother Bernie. There is there is none. You should never do that, right? That's the idea here, is that there is no convenient time, but he was looking for one. He was always wondering, not what I can learn from Jesus, but maybe I can betray him now. Well, maybe now. Maybe now's a good time. So he goes to the chief priest and says, I'm your man. I will be the one to betray him. What can you give me? What do I get in return? So we're going to look at this thought. Number one, the man Judas. Now, on Wednesday nights when we have business meeting, we're looking at the 12 apostles. Now, I believe last month we looked at Judas. Not as in depth as this. So some of this is an overlay. I want to take this off. Somebody is giving me a whole bunch of messages. Forgive the farmer's 10 right here. But we're going to look at some of these. The first one is this. Judas didn't look like the traitor type. Nobody's like, I knew it. I knew it. Peter did not say to John, yep. When he came on board, I just knew he looked fishy. No pun intended. I just knew there was something odd about him. If all the people I knew, no. He played the part very well. In fact, I believe he preached, he taught, he served, all of these things just like everyone else. Sometimes Christians go to church, and people would never peg them for being the traitor type, or being the type that was a follower of Christ. Judas's name, derived from Judah, son of Jacob. Not that this has anything to do much with this, but it's interesting. Jacob is known for being what? What did he do that was like, he's a cheater, right? He was a deceiver. He was that person. Not that that has any relation to Judas, but I just thought it was funny or odd or interesting that his name comes from Judah, happens to be the son of Jacob. Judah was the father of the largest and most dominant of all the tribes of Israel. So Judah was it. He was the high thing, like a Smith or a Joan type of thing. Perhaps, this is just a perhaps, Judas Iscariot was named after Judas Maccabees, who led an uprising for Judas independent years earlier. Maybe they went through this history, and Judas' mom and dad said, hey, I want you to be a religious man like Judas Maccabees was. I want to name, I don't know, possibly, perhaps. Iscariot comes from two words meaning man from Kerioth, a town located 23 miles south of Jerusalem, which is interesting because Judas was the only... Whoa. That's a bummer. I missed 2 points on here. So I will talk slowly. Judas was the only disciple not from Galilee. I think he would have stuck out. But they brought him in as though he was one of them. The only person not from Galilee, almost always, if not always. Judas is listed last in the list of disciples. Those two things were on the second page, not up there on the screen. Not saying that it's of any importance, but every time we think of Judas, what do we think of? Betrayal, right? His name carries a lot. Anybody know a person by the name of Judas by chance? Because of that. 30 pieces of silver. What does that mean? The price someone would pay if his animal accidentally killed someone's animal. You look at Exodus chapter 21, verse 32. If my dog accidentally killed your dog, I would have to pay you that much amount. Price of a slave, you've heard that before, only about $25. That's not a lot of money. That would may buy you and one other a meal from McDonald's or Burger King. And so they decided to, yes, I will betray Jesus for a little bit of money. While what he gave up just to have a little bit of something. Verse 11 gives us the idea that he kept seeking for opportunities to betray him. And he sought how he might conveniently betray him. It wasn't like, yeah, I'm going to get this over with. It was almost as though at this point he was excited to. We know at the end he was not. We thought, but at this point he thinks, yes, this is what I want to do. Mark chapter 3, verse 19. He will forever be associated with the word betray. Just like, Benedict Arnold, right? He is known as a spy. One of the first spies he was hung because of that. And people say, well, you're just being a Benedict Arnold, right? Same thing. You're just a Judas. Are you going to play the Judas? The idea is, are you going to betray me? Mark chapter 3, verse 19 says that he will be betrayed. John chapter 6, verse 70 calls him a devil. Luke 6 and verse 16, a traitor. All these things are who Judas is, and not because he was made to. He made that choice. Peter chose, John chose, Andrew chose, they all chose. Judas chose to betray, to play that part. John chapter 12, verse 4, he was covetous. He was covetous. John chapter 12 and verse number 5, he was a thief. John chapter 13, verse 29, he was deceitful. There's not much good you can say about Judas. Well, he was an okay guy besides this. No. If I dare say, hey guys, let's look at the pros and the cons of Judas. The only pro that I could think of would be at least he followed Jesus. At least he was close. But close, as my father would say, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. That's it. But there are no other pros. Everything will be, he's this, he's bad. He was a deceitful person. It is amazing what a person can hide when he needs to. Amazing. Judas hid all of these things from 11 apostles. It's not like some of you I only see twice a week, sometimes 3 or 4 times a week. The disciples were together. It wasn't like, oh, I didn't know that about you. No doubt they knew a lot of details about each other. Their home life, their temperaments, their characteristics, their likes and their dislikes. And he hid all of this that we just talked about from everyone. It's amazing how the outside can deceive others about what the heart is really about. It's amazing what we can put on the outside to play the game. Anybody been in a play or a skit or a musical, that type of thing? I've done some of those. I much rather, in my personal opinion, for me, play the goofiest person I can. I can say, at least I'm just playing a part, right? They're laughing at the part. They're not laughing at me. They're laughing at the part. Sometimes we as Christians get very accustomed to just playing a part, playing the game, coming to church, giving, singing, saying hi, being sweet, being nice. No doubt Judas had all of that, but on the inside he was empty. Now, verses 12 through 17. This would be the meat of the message tonight. Verse 12, and the first day of unleavened bread, when they killed the Passover, his disciples said unto him, wilt thou that we go and prepare that thou mayest eat the Passover? He sendeth forth 2 of his disciples, and saith unto them, go ye into the city, and there shall meet you a man, bearing a pitcher of water, follow him. Odd. And wheresoever he shall go in, say ye to the good man of the house, you're contagious, Myrna. The master saith, where is the guest chamber? Where shall I eat the Passover? With my disciples, and he shall show you a large upper room, furnished and prepared. There make ready for us. His disciples went forth and came into the city, and found as he had said unto them. And they made ready the Passover. In the evening he cometh with the 12. We're going to look at this as the ending here. Number 2, the meal with Judas. Let me ask you this. Is this the first Passover they've ever eaten together? Well, no. No. At least 3 times. This is probably the 3rd, maybe the 4th, depending on exactly when it fell. Is this the only Passover possibly that Judas has eaten? Possibly. But is this the first Passover or the 3rd Passover ever the disciples have eaten? No, they grew up doing this. It was very commonplace. Um, I'm going to just mention this. I've got time. Jed uh, met me after church on Sunday, handed me 2 sheets of paper, paper. And he said, long time ago, he said, you're talking about Peter. So long time ago, I wrote this poem. I've never written a poem before or since, but it just came to me, and here it is. And especially over the whole life of Peter, 2 pages. Now I'm like, man, that's good stuff. I wanted I wanted him to read it, but then he told me the last time he read it at a church, the next week the pastor was voted out. I said, "You ain't reading that here." No, I said, "Just kidding." Like it was in. I read it, and although the Bible does not say this, it's implied, and he puts it in the poem that Peter, as a boy, we first meet him as a man, right? Peter, as a boy, he knew these things. He went to the tabernacle. He went through all of the turning 13, turning 12. He heard, he was taught. He knew these things. Judas, no doubt, possibly not. I think, yes, that he went through all of these things. He knew it very well. So the more you know something, the easier it is to play the game, right? So I grew up in church. I know and hear what I should say, how I should act, what's expected, and all those types of things. That does not mean that's what my heart wants. The meal with Judas. They knew they had to celebrate the Passover in Jerusalem city limits, but they didn't know specifically. I find that interesting because just as easy as it was for Jesus to say, hey, go to the city, find this man, follow this man, he could have said, we are all going to this house on this part. But he went about it this way. It seems that Jesus sends Peter and John on a surveillance mission. Why would he do that? 2 of you, y'all go and you're going to find a man with a pitcher of water. Follow him, as if that's suspicious. Follow him, go to his house and ask him some questions. Why not just all 13 of them go to this man's house? Hey, we're here for Passover. I got some thoughts. I always have thoughts. Jesus already knew that every detail was in place. I want us to remember this. Just because we don't know the details and don't have the details mapped out doesn't mean that Jesus doesn't have every detail known and mapped out. How many of you want details? Okay. This is a bad night for my in-laws to be here. I apologize. When I'm with my sister on my side of the family, my sister and I plan our vacations way in advance. This day we do this day we do this, we're going to do this, have this meal, and do this. That's just the way I operate. When I married my wife, I did not know that's not how they operate. Not at all. Not at all. Not even close. And I have tried to get my wife to say, okay, Stephanie's coming again with the kids. What's the plan? Oh, I don't know. No. What's the plan? Oh, we'll talk about it when she gets here. Okay. What are we having to eat? I don't know. We'll pick up something. Okay. I need to know so I don't go mad. And then they make plans. The day that let's say we're making plans to go to the beach on Monday. Monday comes, we wake up, I'm ready for the beach, and they're like, no, we decided to do that tomorrow. What? We don't, no. Or one of the best meals that we eat, oh my goodness, scalloped potatoes and ham and broccoli, oh my goodness. If we don't have that every time she comes, then she's not never coming ever again. That's the only time I get that. I ask for it all the time. Just kidding. I'm just playing with y'all. and so I'm like, what day are we having this meal? Tuesday. So Monday, my mouth is watering. I think about it. Can't wait. Tuesday come at supper time, and I don't smell it. I smell tacos. Exactly. Oh no. Ugh, tacos. Like, what happened to the ham meal? Oh, we decided to do it. No, that's not how it works. I want details, man. I am glad that I hardly ever know. We never know every detail of our lives. I'm glad that we don't have to. I'm glad, although it's hard for some of us to do this, to put all of that at the feet of Jesus. It's in your hands. The details. He knows. He has every detail known. He has every detail planned and in place. Maybe, this is a maybe, Jesus was secretive because he didn't want Judas to tip off the chief priests and scribes. Maybe. Well, Judas knows maybe he's going to betray me before, so on and so forth. Just a thought. When I put thoughts in there, I tend to put maybe, those kinds of things. Just a thought. But what is not just a thought is this. Jesus always has a plan and details in place, even when we don't know and cannot see. Sometimes we ask why. Why would this happen? Why now? Why me? Why this? Why in this circumstance? Why, God? We don't know the details, but God does. And we must rest assured, and we must be assured in that peace that the one who knows the details is taking care of me. Jesus always has a plan. The master of the house. He wasn't a disciple. He wasn't one of the apostles. But he was willing to use whatever he had for God. Sure, use the upper room. The disciple used this upper room when they huddled after the resurrection again on the day of Pentecost. Interesting thought. So what does that mean for us? We ought to be faithful for God's glory, no matter where we are. Not a pastor, teacher, preacher, missionary, just a church member, a janitor, sound technician, retired, working. Doesn't matter who you are and what stage of life. We ought to be faithful for God's glory. The question is this: what place does God have furnished for you? That's scary sometimes. That we don't know the details, and God has a particular time and place for us. We should take trips with teenagers, either for competitions or junior, senior trips, and that type of thing. And usually I'm the one, obviously, who planned all the details of that. And then when another lady came on staff, she did that. And so I would plan the motels and things. Only once in, I don't know, how many years were we there? 5 years? No, not 9 years. Sorry. 9 years that we were there. Took many trips, many motel stops with teenagers on trips. Only once that I can remember when the kids looked at me and said, "We're staying there?" Only once. They're like, "But coach or pastor or Mr. Folsom, we've never stayed this kind of place before." I said, one time I messed up. We pulled in the middle of the night. It was a motel, so the doors were on the outside. I don't like staying with teenagers. And so I told them, I said, "You go into those rooms. You do not come out until I come to your door." Like, but that person looks like I know what she looks like. Go into your room and do not come out. I could hear noises. I was like, I was nervous. I'm glad that God has a place that he has prepared and furnished just for us. So therefore, as was mentioning in the prayer request time, when we get to those places, he gives us grace to go through that. He gives us peace, a comfort, because he has prepared that place for you. Verse 16 says this, and they made ready the Passover. In verse 12, they asked, should we go so that we can prepare the Passover? What does that mean, to prepare the Passover? We were in Bible college, and this Jewish person got saved. He was a practicing Jew. Got saved, and so he would go around not only preaching, but really showing the Jewish customs. And he did this in a class or chapel, I don't remember. Went through everything that he did as a boy when it comes to the Passover. And the reason why the mom and dad did this type of stuff, I could no way in shape or form do it that way. But there were some things that you did for the Passover. It wasn't like, hey guys, we're having a meal. We're going to stop by McDonald's, grab the bag, open it up. You got this, and let's eat. That's not what happened. It's a lot more detailed than that. The first thing that they did, it had to be an unblemished lamb would be sacrificed. We know that, right? A spotless lamb. That is why Jesus is the Lamb of God. The lamb would be roasted, not deep fried, not baked, not sauteed. The lamb would be roasted. Cups of wine would be set on the table. Bitter herbs will be placed on the table as well. Dipping sauce of dried fruit and spices will be moistened with some wine vinegar and put in bowls. So it wasn't just, hey, we having some bread and juice. It was a lot more detailed than that. I remember one of the things that struck to me, and can you remember his name? Starts with H. That's all I got. I'm horrible with names. One of the things that he mentioned that I thought was interesting was the house had to be spotless. No dirt, no dust, no anything. So the wife would go through and clean everything. And then the husband would go and, what was the word? He would go check it. He would go white glove it, pretty much, that type of thing. To go make sure everything, because he's the one responsible for how everything is. And according to him, one of the few things that I remember from his presentation is that she would always leave dust someplace. So that when he went through, it wasn't in vain, pretty much. All the details the Jewish people did with that. Amazing. You know, and it's so detail oriented. So that's what they did. So he said, hey, should we go make ready the Passover? And they're doing all of these things. Verse 17. In the evening he cometh with the 12. The Passover meal couldn't begin till after sunset and had to finish before midnight. Three things, three times in this passage, there is a word. Verse 12, it is mentioned. Verse 15 is mentioned. And in verse 16 is mentioned. And that word is prepare or prepared. The idea is to make or made ready. To prepare for something. To make ready. So the question is this that we'll leave you with is, what are you preparing for the master? Are you prepared? Prepare to meet thy God. Prepare to meet thy maker. There's a song. I had a CD group singing. It was a live production. And so one of the singers, I remember hearing this often. He said, God's coming back. Are you ready to go? Have you made ready? Have you made your preparation? Are your bags packed and ready to go? Some of us will sit here and stand here and say, yes, boy, I cannot wait for that day. I get to see Jesus, my lost loved ones, worship God. Boy, I am ready for that day. In our minds, we can be ready all we want to be. But the question is, are our lives ready? Can we say, as Paul says, I have fought a good fight, I have finished my course, I've kept the faith. I have done all that I can do. Cody, when he was born, in my mind, I was close. In my mind, I was like, yeah, I can't wait. Yeah, I get a baby. We get a child. Yay, little Stephen coming. Yay. And then she had the baby. And now I'm like, and then all of a sudden, as you all know, here comes the diapers, the crying, the sleepless nights, the feeding, all of these things. I thought to myself, my mind was ready, but I'm not sure my body was ready. I'm not sure, And then Cora is almost 16. He's 8. And then 8 years after we had our last one, Tiffany is pregnant with Caleb. And then people are like, are you ready for this one? I'm like, yes. They're like, but you're older now. I'm like, psh. And then Caleb was born. And he's the most hyper of them all. And I'm like, I'm not sure I was ready for this. Sometimes we think we are ready to meet God, but we're not ready here. We're not ready to stand before the judgment seat of Christ. We're not ready to meet our Maker. We're not ready to meet God. What are you preparing for the Master? Next week, we're going to look at this thought. We looked at the man, Judas, the meal with Judas. And next week, we'll look at this thought, the message to learn from Judas. What can we learn from a guy who didn't learn anything? What can, sometimes it's easier to learn from what I'll tell my kids, watch what I don't do. The things I don't do, that's what you learn. We're going to learn from Judas some things that I believe will be life changers in our life. Let's pray. God, thank you for all you've given us. Help us now as we leave, as we dismiss, as we bring this service to a close, but as in every service and constantly, whether we're in church and we said a final amen, or we're at our houses and the cars, you still speak to our hearts. Help us to chew on the facts, on the details, on the lessons that you have taught us. Help us to meditate upon the message. Help us to learn what you have for us to learn. I love you. This name I pray. Amen. Don't forget, Friday, 10:30 is the adult